So what exactly is the problem? You are in that sector.
Right. I am in that sector, and one of the things that has been the major challenge is structure. You mentioned the broadcasting and all of that. I guess probably because everybody needed that. Everybody needs to wear clothing, but then there are alternatives. And I feel because we have alternatives for clothing and some of the other industries, we could easily just go abroad and import every item that you have. Even though these cane pieces are probably taken from Nigeria to be refined and properly finished, you still, I mean, because we have access to it, and we could just go and do that. We don't bother to look at our industry, our local industry, and think, okay, we have a lot of people that could be employed in all of these areas. What can we do to make them economic activities and not just things that you play around with? These are the things that I think are the major problems that we have in such industries. Nobody thinks of the structure. For instance, there are laws that are guided. There's issue of intellectual property in all of this. Nobody is thinking about all of that. So you find that you cannot actually make any economic impact without all of these structures in place. If you don't have something, I mean, you're putting out all your, for instance, a lot of designers have gone abroad for different shows. I have gone. But without you trademarking, without you registering your designs, without you having your designs protected, they just go on, especially now with the IT system, world that we are in. Anybody gets access to everything. There's no law guiding anybody against. They go there, and then you find some of these even very well-known international designers picking up designs from African designers or Nigerian designers per se, because you have not been protected. You just go out there in the open, you're exposed. There's nothing protecting you. So all of these issues are the things that we need to begin to look at so that we can have the proper harnessing of these potentials, so that also they become more economic values, they create employment. Because, for instance, if you're looking at the textile or garment industry, I used to say that about in the 70s, that industry was the largest employer of labor in this land. But what has happened? It has died down. All the textile companies have closed down. The little that we have happening here is just the activity of a few individuals, private investors and things. Very little, very little. And even though the government has tried to sort of like through the intervention fund, a lot is still undone. There's no effect, there's no impact in the industry itself, because we are not really harnessing all the potentials that we have. We're not putting all the structures in place. We're not putting what we call the enable environment. I always say that the government probably doesn't have the political will to actually do what it takes. Well, even individuals don't.
Yeah, talking about, you talked about intellectual property, of course, protecting them, the issue of piracy. Yeah, I know whenever we talk about piracy, of course, which is a major challenge in the creative industry. Right. But when you talk about piracy, it's always related to perhaps the music and the film and maybe the publishing. Yeah, because I kind of wonder, just as you've said, if you have your own design and, you make your own design, someone can actually pick it up and give to his tailor or her tailor. Please make this design. I mean, how do we deal with this? Because that is also still an intellectual property.
Right. Actually. Right. We already, maybe she wants to go first, but because she's a professional in that industry. But I just wanted to say that it's part of creativity. Once there's no intellectual property, there is no creativity. In fact, it is work done equals zero. There's a government part of it, and a legislative part of it. There are laws in Nigeria. There's the Copyright Commission, on manner. Whether enforcing those laws are sufficient, whether there's sufficient enforcement, is another debate for another day. But there are some laws in Nigeria. But I think the individual who is creating should, as part of creativity, come up with methods and means to codify what you're doing. When you're in an environment, part of creative solution provision is to protect yourself. Because this problem will not go away soon.
No.
We won't make it an excuse not to produce. We already need the creative industries anyway. Because there are persons who have succeeded in this industry, in this part of the world. We had in the olden days,
Right.
Somehow they survived. Somehow they became people winning albums and awards and all of that. So the challenge to creative people, which I say all the time to them, is please protect yourself. For the people going abroad to do shows and all of that, one of the suggestions I have is that then make a lot of noise about your design.
Right.
That exposure, don't be silent about it. So have share of voice. Make a lot of noise that you're at this show. These are your designs. Give it your name. Give it your label. Make noise. As you're creating, the internet now, interestingly, has become a means of advertising that's very cheap. So go there, do small YouTube video with your phone, show yourself, put it on Facebook, make a lot of noise around what you're doing. And you see, by law of predate, which means I'm the first person to put this thing on the table. So if your design comes 2 weeks later, you can actually write on a blog where everybody reads fashion-wise that, guys, I am the one who first did this design, and whatever name in Italy is coming up with it. You may not need to fight them cash for cash.
Legally or something,
you understand? But at least there is the image. There's the image that, okay, this is a creative powerhouse. And I would like her to also comment about this.
Well, that is a good suggestion, but I think that doesn't really work. Because I'm in that industry. There's nothing stopping anybody from copying what you're doing. But what we're talking about is the structure. When the system has like a control system in place, which is what obtains in so many of the other countries that we don't have here in Nigeria, even some of the smaller African countries. I found out some years ago when I was trying to get some tailors from Republic of Benin, Cotonou, that they have this law in place that guides the industry at different levels. You were expected to go through some internship, which you call apprenticeship or whatever level, which you get some form of certification to operate at whatever minimum level that you. So you're supposed to go through like a training of about between 6 to 10 years before you are even allowed to put up a machine and open a small corner shop. So,
but that is not done here.
That is not even here.
Anybody can just
open up. So where you find somebody just seeing a design and giving it to a tailor, that tailor already has been registered and is certified to an extent. So what we're talking about is there are regulations around it, but we don't have such regulations in Nigeria. I guess one of the major problems we have is our population. And then also we are not really structured. In the fashion industry itself is not really structured. The association is there, but there's so much that is happening that cannot be controlled, but which we are, because I'm the current national vice president, we have been trying to sort of like control the industry, because it's something very difficult. It's very open, but then it's possible. And then, sorry, I need to put this in quickly.
Yeah.
I attended a ministerial conference in Cape Verde some year, I think about last November, about the creative industry and this sort of like this discussion. And there was something we took home from there, which the Cape Verde was doing. They had a national seal of authenticity for every artwork, every piece, there was a seal that they had, which everybody was advised to take back home and see how we can also implement that in our countries, because that sort of like gives an identity to what, no matter how small it is, there's that small emblem that each registered item carries, so you know the authentic one.
All right.